Thanks everyone for joining me. It's another episode of The Travel Collective where I talk to travelers, people creating and inventing new items to make our lives easier when we travel. And today I'm excited to talk to Kathleen. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you so much for having me, April.
Oh, you're welcome. And I really enjoyed meeting you at the Travel Goods Show. And I
Mhm,
found out you're also an inventor and you've invented something pretty ingenious for all of
mhm,
us, actually. So
mhm.
tell us about your invention and the story behind designing it.
Yeah, so thank you again. My invention is probably not what you would think of first when you think of travel. I created a towel called Mobility Towel for my mom, who suffered from rheumatoid arthritis and had multiple surgeries, and so had some limitations. And she asked me one night if I would help her the next day after she showered and dry her off, which I would do anything for my mom, and was prepared to do it and helped her the next morning. But I couldn't help but thinking I would hate for somebody to have to do that for me. And so I wanted to figure out a way for her to do it for herself. And so I created a modified towel. Basically, it has light weights at the bottom corners of the towel, so, and handles at the midpoint of the towel, so that she could drape the towel over her legs. And the towel, the weights would wrap around the legs, and she could, if she could grip that day, she could hang on to the handles. If she was having difficulty gripping, she could just slide her wrist through and then pull the handle up. And then for her back, because of her limitations, we can, shimmy our back
Yeah.
dry and do all this. Well, she wasn't able to do that. But with the handles on the towel, she could use her one good arm and drape the towel over her back, pull it up, and the weights would keep it tight to the back on the skin to dry her back. And then the weights in the bottom were pliable, so she could rub her feet over the weights and really get in between the toes. And so she used that. Unfortunately, she passed before I had my final production, but she was my tester for all my, what I call my crude prototypes, with my safety pins and Ziploc bags full of sand and BBs and all sorts of different things. So she really was the inspiration behind it, and the reason that I decided to move forward with it. She was all about helping and caring for others. And I thought, after she passed, I put it on a shelf and didn't do anything with it for a number of years, and
Oh,
was really, really thinking about her and her legacy and what I could do and how I wanted to carry on, if you will. And
yeah.
decided then that I was gonna do something with the towel, and started the process of working with getting a provisional patent and a patent, and honing in on the design a little more. So yeah, and it really, as I talk to different people and I think about her, and she and I did a lot of traveling together, a lot to see family and friends. But there are times where you just want to be able to go and do when you want to do and not have to depend on anybody else. And the towel was something that gives people that one, independence and freedom to do when they want to do, but also the dignity. Um,
Yes. I
the,
think that's a huge part of it. I mean, even if we're
right,
younger and we were to have an operation or a medical
right,
procedure,
right,
that is one thing. If we can keep our dignity, I mean, it
right.
just means so much. I mean, being
Hmm.
able to, even if you're living in maybe an assisted situation, if you're able to still bathe yourself and clean,
Right.
I think that's huge.
Yeah. It really is. And I think about you really don't know. I think, shift gears a little bit. I've been very fortunate in some ways, depending on how you want to look at things, because my mom has been such a positive influence that I've always had an appreciation for um, her limitations and her suffering, if you will, and surgeries and all that. But I never knew how gracious she was until she's gone. And I see other people who are dealing with different ailments and limitations, whether they're permanent or temporary, and how it can really shade your attitude and your perspective and all of that. And she she didn't. She was a bright light and always had a positive attitude. And but I never really appreciated her limitations until, I had a couple things. I had a neck issue where I couldn't put my own socks on because of some nerve
Oh,
involvement in my neck. And you don't know what you don't know until it happens to you. And mobility towel is something I think that, of course I created it and I think everybody should have it in their closet, but you don't know you need it until you need it,
yes,
and when you needed it yesterday. And
right,
I think there are just
exactly.
so many things that you either need or you don't want to admit that you need, if you will.
I think that's part of it too. It's like even with aging, and we're all going to age. That's something
Right.
we can't change.
Yeah.
We love people that are aging, but yet
Mhm.
as people age, there's that hesitation to share, to admit that, you're having
Right.
trouble maybe bathing or
Hmm.
trouble with any of these things.
Right. Right.
And by the time you're able to maybe have the courage, I kind of call it
Mhm.
courage to
It is.
admit, it's
Yeah.
courage, to admit,
Yeah.
even if you're younger and you had an operation, and sometimes
Right.
we don't have partners or we don't have family close
Right.
anymore. Families have spread apart so much. I think about that
Right.
often, actually. It's
Yeah.
like, you know what? I want to have this in my house now because
Right.
we don't
You
know.
don't know. Yeah. I think, I had one person who purchased it. She had rotator cuff surgery, and she talked to me later and she said, your towel really helped me. I didn't have to go to rehab. I was able to stay in the hospital because she was single, home by herself. And if she wasn't able to bathe herself and dry herself and do all that,
Yeah.
she was going to have to go to rehab for a little bit, or that was a decision that they were making.
Yeah.
And she said, it helped her in that regard. And so, um, yeah, but as we age, there was a study that was done, I think in 2016, so it's a few years old, but um, they asked seniors what they were fearful of, and more seniors feared losing their independence more than dying, more than death.
Wow.
And that independence really it's key. I mean, I don't know what I would do if somebody told me I couldn't drive or I couldn't, do something. It really takes a lot to admit,
Right. Or that you needed someone to come into your home. And like I
right?
said, I mean, so many of us live far from family and we
Yeah.
want to be able to keep doing, and
Hmm.
our minds are still active. We still have these goals, and we still think we're 20, and
Right, right,
you take a bad fall, you slip on something wrong, and now you realize, hey, I'm not so capable. But you don't want to have to maybe have a stranger come into your home to help you
right,
bathe or do
right.
some of these just basics.
Hmm.
So the towel, I mean, you're shining a light and helping so many people, which I love. I think that's
Yeah,
fabulous that you took it off the shelf in memory of your mom and
yeah,
continuing to brighten people's lives, make
yeah,
things better.
yeah. I hope to. It's been an interesting journey, as doing your own thing and trying to get things out there. But when you hear I had an email a couple weeks ago from a gentleman who said that he purchased a towel for his wife who had had hip replacement surgery and was so glad that he did because it helped her tremendously, and he was going to be spreading the word. And it's those things that just give you back your independence,
Right,
you
exactly.
know. And it helps the caregiver in a way. They don't have to be there to do it. Not that they wouldn't be, but it can be difficult for them to help as well. So,
It is challenging, especially for caregivers. And I'm glad you touched on that because for spouses or daughters or even a neighbor
right.
that you might have,
Mm-hmm.
it can be stressful. I mean, just
Right.
and we start to see ourselves too, like,
Right.
wow, that person only took a fall, or this happened to that person. They don't, it's like yesterday everything was fine,
It's
and now it's
fine.
like
Right.
now they need help. And
Right.
people want to
Yeah.
help, but it also is tiring and
It
challenging
is. It's
emotionally.
exhausting. Yeah. Yep. So,
So let's talk a little bit about travel. I
Yeah.
loved traveling with my mother, so I'm
Uh-huh.
sure you had some experiences of traveling with your
Oh my
mother.
gosh. We did. We had a lot of fun traveling. We traveled a lot to see family. We've never lived in the same city as our extended family. And so we were always traveling. And one funny story on we took a cruise. And again, it was centered around family. I think there were about 35 of us that went on this cruise. And my mom and I were roommates. And so the last night, I'm not well versed in cruises or anything. I haven't done a lot of them, but you put your luggage out in the hallway the
Oh,
night before and everything. And so, she'd packed up her stuff and I packed up mine. She was going to bed a little earlier than I was, so I was going to put all of our stuff out. And she had said to me something about, if you'll just get my stuff and put it in, then so I come back into the room and I'm getting her stuff together and to put it out in the hallway. And the next morning we get up to get going and she's like, where are my clothes? Like she left a couple
oh,
things hanging in the closet.
right.
I packed them.
Oh
They were
no,
gone.
they were gone,
They
right?
were gone. And so here she was. I mean, we called around to see if anybody had any other clothes or anything. She had to leave in her nightgown
Oh, she did.
in
She
her
had to
bathroom,
disembark.
had to
And
get off the boat in her nightgown. As soon as we got her luggage, then we got her change. But even in all that, she was so gracious in that I would have had a fit,
oh, I would have lost it, I think.
I but she just went along with it and just, um, she just had a way of making everything fun. She and my mom were traveling. I mean, my sister and my mom were traveling one time and they were going by airplane somewhere in their flight, I think weather delays and all of that. And so, my mom had a game in her purse. I can't remember if it was like LCR. I don't know if you're familiar with that, left,
No.
center, right. It's a little dice game.
Oh my
And
gosh, yeah.
it wasn't long before she had a table full of other people who were waiting on the same flight. And she tells the story of the one family who had a teenager who, was like, not, just
Yeah.
begrudgingly participated. And by the end was so engaged in the game and everything. She had a way of drawing people in. Um, and we did a lot of road trips together and she just, you know, made it fun. She didn't know a stranger, which was nice. And whenever she would travel, and if she traveled by herself, we'd meet her at the airport, but we were always prepared because we never knew who she was bringing home for dinner. Because
Oh, okay.
invariably she would meet somebody and they would be her best friend,
Yeah.
And so yeah, we had a lot of good fun trips. But she, in traveling sometimes there were adjustments that we had to make. I just drove to Atlanta the other day and I think I stopped one time. It's about a 10-hour drive. Um, but when I traveled with my mom, we were stopping every couple of hours so that she could get out and move around a little bit
Right.
and things like that. But it never seemed like a chore, like, come on, let's just get there. Let's come
Right.
on, we're getting in the car and going. But yeah, just it's fun, those memories that you create. I remember another time we were driving home from Pensacola and we were in Memphis, and anytime they have weather, any snow related or ice, and they had some ice, and there was what I would call a very small incline, but the 18 wheelers couldn't make it up. So we were stuck in traffic. You put the car in park, stuck in
Yeah.
traffic. And so we were sitting there and she's like, oh, my uncle had made some divinity.
Yeah.
And so she's like, where's that divinity? And I said, oh, it's in the back of the van. And she's like, oh, get the divinity. So I'm crawling to the back of the van and we just had our own little party on the highway, you
Oh,
know.
that's great.
Yeah, she just made everything fun,
Yeah.
regardless of if we were stuck in traffic or just sailing through.
So what are some things people should think about if they're thinking about maybe traveling with an aging adult or
Mhm.
parent, or what might be some tips on choosing a
Yeah.
destination or
Yeah. I think there's so many different things, you know, when we travel, we were usually going to see family, so we knew the environment that we were going to be in. If there was, a high bed that we needed to think
um,
about, would she be able to get up into the bed, or did we need to bring anything? But a lot of people are traveling to resorts and to hotels and things like that, and just aren't quite sure what they're going to get.
yeah,
So to whatever extent possible, to check with the hotels or wherever they're going to be to see. Not everybody needs an ADA room, but some people may have a walker or a rollator or something that they need space to be able to maneuver around. And so making sure that there's some of those spaces available. I think by car, people usually are comfortable if they've been traveling in their own car. Um, just if it's a route they haven't been on before, knowing, really looking to see where we could stop and stop safely if we need to
yes,
stop, like my mom, every 100 miles or so. Not everywhere is a place where you want to stop. Um,
right. I think that's
but
really important too, because you
mhm,
can, now that we do have the internet, we do have a lot of tools. You can kind of plan your route
right.
ahead of time and kind of
Mhm,
time it, like, for bathrooms, or some people need to eat to take medications, or,
right.
kind of pre-looking at those things, because the last thing you want is, and it's happened to me. I mean, you're like in the
Right.
middle of nowhere and you desperately need a bathroom, and
Right.
not all of us are comfortable just pull it, especially for women, pulling
Right,
the side
right.
of the road and finding a bush is not for a lot of us.
No, And I do a lot of traveling alone. Like I said, I just drove to Atlanta um last week and made a quick trip there. And um I've made that drive a couple times, but not as familiar with the route. And there's an app that I use when I'm on a major highway or something called iExit,
Oh,
and it tells you, like, you can pull it up and it'll show the route you're on. So if I was on Interstate 24, it would pull up, I'm going south, and it'll show you all the exits, and it'll show you what gas stations are there, what restaurants are there, the cost of the gas. So
oh,
you can
nice.
kind of see. So some of those apps have been helpful in figuring out where to stop. Um, I think people that are traveling by air, certainly airlines are doing more to make accommodations, but then, you're renting a car, and depending, unless you're renting a specific type, you may think you're getting an SUV, which somebody could get into fairly
Oh,
easily if it's not a suburban or something, but making sure that it's not a car that's too low or too high. Just seeing what can be done, and not to some it's hard sometimes to say, hey, I need this for because of my physical limitations, but to not be too proud in that, because it really will make a difference in your own comfort.
yes, yes, I agree.
Yeah, and
Same
that's
like you.
hard to do.
Yeah, that is. And you touched on hotel rooms. And I know when we were at
Mhm,
the travel show, you were saying how you kind of go into a room kind of looking for things that,
mhm.
because again, the hotel doors sometimes are super
Right,
heavy.
right.
I've been
Yeah,
into hotel bathrooms that, if, like you said, even if you just had a walker or
right,
needed to hold bars just for your own stability,
right,
you might not necessarily need an ADA room, but
right.
is there a room that you could request or know ahead of time, like, you know what, this is going to be difficult to get into, or how
Mhm,
far from the elevator? I mean, some people it's not a big
right.
deal to walk that far, and for other people it's like, that's a long schlep.
Yeah, yeah. There's a group, and this is who I learned it from. So when we were in Las Vegas for the Travel Goods
Yeah.
Show, there's a group called Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. And one of the things that they do are hotel reviews for senior friendliness. and they look at a whole bunch of things. And so Janice, who is with Towsey Brands, and I were rooming together. We decided, maybe we'll do our own hotel review of the room that we're in. And
Right.
so we did this hotel review. In fact, Adaptive Equipment Caregiving Corner posted it. But you look at, you look at things like you said, the weight of the door. Some of the hotel doors, you open those doors, and if you don't get out of the way quick, it could knock you over.
Yes.
And they look at the carpet, how thick the carpet is and pile. If you're pushing a walker, is it easy to push a walker? Is there enough room to turn around? What is the light in the room like? Is it too dark? One of the things we noticed in the hotel where we were in Las Vegas was a nice room, had everything you'd need, but if you were short or had difficulty reaching up, you couldn't reach the hang your clothes. It was up pretty high,
Oh,
which
wow.
is not something that you'd normally think about. And then in the bathroom, are there grab bars? Is it just a tub? Do you have to step over? How high is the toilet?
Yes.
My mom used to joke about, there's the regular toilets, and then as she says, there's the high rise.
Yes.
And so she wanted, if it's a high rise or not. And so but Adaptive Equipment Caregiving Corner really does a lot to provide resources for people. But that's where we got the idea to try to add to their collection of hotel reviews.
Yeah, I'm gonna post that link in the show description later because I think that's
Yeah.
super helpful.
Yeah, they have a lot. And there's so many different adaptive equipment like mobility towel. There's so many other things out there for the hotel. I love going with them to shows and just standing in their booth because I learned so much.
Yes.
But one of the things they had was this little like doorstop. It was about that tall, and it had a doorstop on the bottom. I'm like, what is that? Well, it was a
Yeah.
telescopic handle with a doorstop on the bottom. So at a hotel where the door is really heavy, you've got this doorstop you can put in, and then you do the telescopic handle. So then you don't have to bend over to get it out of the door if you
Right.
have any issues. And it's compact, it's easy to carry if you know that's an issue for you.
Yeah.
And then there's and I use this for my mom. It's a forget the formal name of it, but it's like a handle you can stick in your door jamb, your car door,
Uh-huh.
so that when she was getting in and out, she had another handle down low that would help her push herself and brace herself to get in and out of the car.
Wow, that's
Um,
ingenious. There's some
yeah,
really
the
innovative things.
yeah, if you look at the Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner at their website, they have products on there, and they do reviews of a lot of their products, and they have videos. Their whole one of their purposes is they want to educate people to what's out there,
Yes.
and for people to touch and feel and see and engage with products before they need it, but to
Right.
even know what's out there. I was at a show with them, and I met them because they did a review of mobility towel, and they have a seal of approval that they give some products. And so we've really they don't live too far from St. Louis, which is where I am. And so I like to go to different shows. But as I'm looking at all the products, I saw one, and it was just this little, like probably about this big. Oh, and it was weighted, and it had little like elastic straps in it.
Oh,
What
yeah.
is this? And it was a weight that fits on the palm of your hand and goes over your fingers. And so for people who have tremors or Parkinson's, the
Right.
weight helps reduce the tremors. And so I'm like, oh, my uncle needs that. So I ended up purchasing it for him, and he loved it. It helped him so much.
Oh
So
my
I
gosh.
just wasn't
Cool.
aware of everything that's out there. And there's so much out there that from being with them, I have a lot of, I'm very fortunate to have a very close extended family, and we all help each other out with things. And a lot of my cousins' parents are aging and things like that. And so they're going through different things. And I'm like, oh, you can here's a
Yes.
product for that. And it's been
Yeah.
so helpful. Yeah.
Well, it's just like you said about thinking even about hotels,
Right, right,
often we don't even think about the questions to ask ahead of time until we encounter the issue when we check
right.
into our hotel. I mean, I traveled with a woman who was over 6 foot tall, and a lot of I'm
Mhm.
short, so I don't
Right,
often think about how high the shower head is. If
right.
anything, sometimes it's too
Too
high
high.
for me to adjust it,
Right.
but for her, sometimes it was too low
Too.
and it was like, not
Yeah,
so again, making a phone call maybe ahead of time to the front desk and asking,
right.
what kind of
What?
shower head? Is it
Uh-huh.
adjustable? Is it handheld?
Right,
And again, if they have room, and it's more beneficial to you. I mean, today it just
right.
so happened the hotel I'm in, it is the ADA room, and even though I
Nice.
don't necessarily need it, it's like the
Uh-huh.
bathroom is just so much more roomy, and it
Yeah.
does have an adjustable,
Uh-huh.
shower head.
Shower head. Yeah, yeah.
I'm like,
I would
"That's great."
that yeah. I will say, going back to the cruise, we
Yeah,
had for my mom, we had a ADA room. And when we went into some of, our other family's room, it was really, really tiny. I mean, the rooms were really tiny. And so every once in a while somebody would call or knock on the door and I'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry. It took me a while to get from one side of the room to the other because it was so much bigger and roomier because they need to have room for a walker or wheelchair to move around and
right,
all of
right.
that." So if you look to the positive for needing the space, that's one positive.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
And
so
making a list of questions to ask
yeah,
when it's easy for many of us to just go online and book our hotel rooms, but it's some of these small things that can make that stay so much more enjoyable is what questions to ask, even as
right.
simple of things, if someone's traveling with a CPAP machine and needs an outlet near the
That
bed,
right.
a lot of
Yep.
rooms, sometimes it's not super easy to get
No,
the CPAP plugged in.
right. Yeah. It's funny how, and I say this all the time that I don't even know everything that I need to be grateful for because I haven't fortunately haven't had that obstacle or anything, but you just don't know what somebody needs or what they're facing until it happens.
Right, right. So talk a little bit about air travel. I know you mentioned you have to travel a lot solo for these
Hmm.
conferences, and sometimes you probably have to take a lot of extra things. What are some tips for packing and air travel that you use for yourself?
Yeah. So for me, I like to pack as light as I can go. If possible, I'd rather carry my stuff on than to check it. Um, and so I'm a roller in terms of packing and sometimes using those bags to compress everything if I can. Um, and then always for me, I guess I'm a Girl Scout at heart where I like to be prepared for anything. Like if something happens to my luggage, then I'm going to have this just in case or whatever. So I have to be careful with that too to not double pack. But air travel is hard because
Yeah,
you're out of control for so much except for what you carry on. And if you're for a direct flight, it's one thing. But if you're going to have a layover, what doesn't seem that heavy carrying your bag into the airport and getting on the plane on the front end, but it gets really heavy really quickly when you're lugging it around for a couple of hours.
yes,
um,
exactly.
and
And
so just, yeah,
no,
go
I was
ahead.
going to say I've started to think about that too because again, you age and it's like what was easy, see these 20-year-olds, they got this
Right.
huge backpack with all this stuff, but again, is it going to be easier for you to roll your bag through the airport and,
Mhm.
maybe, what can you put under the seat in front of you? But again, how much do you weight wise? Because if you're having to
Right.
spend a lot of extra time in the airport too, I mean, some things are
Right.
far away. They drop you off at this gate, and yes, you have time to maybe get something to eat or your plane gets
Right.
delayed just to get to where the food is. Sometimes it's like,
Right. It's a haul. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. Yeah. I guess the other thing when I think about packing and my mom, I think got to the point too where she really focused on on what she needed, not necessarily what may have looked the best. If you can give up some of that vanity, if you will,
Right.
like, I don't need 3 pair of shoes because I have 3 different outfits. I need to make this, go with whatever, so I'm not having to lug around so much. Um, Again, different if you're going to see family and things like that, where you have washer and dryer and those types of things, but where you can simplify and wear the same thing, once or
Yeah.
twice if it's
Yeah.
not, And then I don't know if you saw at the travel show, the retro strap.
Yes,
He
I think I
was
did.
yeah, where you could pull the bag behind you with that strap, so that your hands free, and one tool potentially for some, and at least for some that could be in a wheelchair or on crutches where you might not be able to pull a bag with you, the retro strap would be something.
Yeah, I thought that was really handy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or if you're trying to assist someone else, because now you're
right,
trying to maybe juggle their things
right.
plus your own.
Uh-huh.
And I love the idea too, like sometimes, rethinking our quote vanity
Just
and like, can we dress up a blouse? So yes, I could wear it
right,
casual, but maybe tomorrow I am doing a presentation or going to be in a
right.
more business situation. Can I make it look a little more classy by adding just a simple
So,
necklace or, put a basic blazer or something over it. And then
mhm.
later, yeah, just again, try to be I really think through what I pack now. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
lay it out, try it on, is it gonna be
Uh-huh.
comfortable? Because sometimes we're wearing these clothes for many hours now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And what looks good sometimes isn't always the most comfortable.
Right. But you can find things that will look just fine
Yeah,
and look
right.
yeah, and
Yeah.
go for a more business look if it's
Mm-hmm.
classic and timeless, and
Right.
some of those things our mothers probably taught us that, when we were growing
Yeah.
up in college, we're like, "That just looks
Yeah.
dull and
That's
boring."
right. Yeah. I'm
But
not
you know
doing
what?
that. Yeah.
Dull and boring can be
It's yeah.
utilitarian, and it saves so much time and space in our bags.
Yeah. It is funny as I'm getting older too and seeing things, how your perspective changes on different things, or your value of what's important, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. So do you have destinations you want to travel to that you haven't been?
There's one that I have always said, and I don't really know why, but Fiji for some reason is someplace I've always wanted to go. And I think I was first introduced to Fiji when I played basketball when I was in college, and we were over one of our breaks, we went to Hawaii and played in Hawaii. And while we were there, we went to the Polynesian Culture Center. And there they did this parade of boats and had all the islands and places. And Fiji it's just one place that has always I've just said I've always wanted to go to Fiji, and I haven't made it happen yet, but that's one place I think I'd really like to go.
Yeah, I think you should try to make it happen,
Yeah. Have you
Yeah.
been to Fiji?
No, I have not been to
Not,
Fiji, but I have been to Hawaii, and it's funny how
oh,
sometimes you think about a destination for years and years, and it's like
yeah.
at some point you have to just kind of try
You
to make
just,
it a goal to
yeah.
go, and
Uh-huh.
because the places change and,
They do. Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting on a significant birthday, a friend of mine and I share the same birth year. And so for our 50th birthday, we were talking, early, like on New Year's Eve, just kind of talking about the year and what you want to accomplish and everything. And we were talking about people that bring you energy and people that drain you, and so we were
right.
talking about these +1 people. And then we shifted gears and we're talking about, 50th birth. Are you going to do anything for your 50th? Are you going to do anything? And so, like a month later, we both live in different places. He was in North Carolina at the time. I was in St. Louis, and he called and he said, "Hey, I have an idea for my birthday." And I said, "Okay, what?" He said, "Well, I've always said I wanted to be in all 50 states by the time I'm 50." And he said, "I have one state left."
Oh, wow.
And he said, and I was thinking Alaska probably or Hawaii.
Yeah.
Nope, nope. Vermont was his last state.
Oh, you're kidding.
And no, so he said, I was thinking about maybe renting an RV and asking some people that are plus one because we'd had that conversation. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. He's like, well, do you want to do it with me? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. So he invited a couple people and I invited a couple people. Nobody knew. I didn't know all his people. He didn't know my people. And we all met. We flew into Philadelphia. He and I flew up a day early to pick up the RV. And then we met in Philadelphia. The next day we went into New York, just not with the RV though,
Oh, good.
to,
Yeah.
to tour and to see a play and all of that. And then we started on our trek and we went to the Pez factory in Connecticut. We went to Ben and Jerry's. We went to the Amish country. We just took this trip and it was interesting. There ended up being 4 men, 4 women, one married couple and of that group. And for 8 people who didn't know each other, we
Yeah.
all got along beautifully. And it was one of the best trips that I've taken. It was spontaneous. It was fun. It was, and we saw parts of the country that some had never seen. I'd lived on the East Coast for a while, so it was nice to be able to see a lot of
Yeah.
it. But I saw parts of New York that I had not seen and how gorgeous it was. And it was just a fun trip.
That sounds amazing,
Yeah,
actually.
it was
But like
fun,
you said, to have 8 people and you didn't really all know each other,
right?
and now you're in one RV, it sounds like?
Well, we did have a car with us.
Oh, okay. Did I lose you?